Welcome, Adventure. I'm GM Goblin, your GM Goblin. And today, we're going to talk about religion and the table, specifically the tabletop. I am going to be going over tabletop just in general, but I'm going to use, even though I am a purveyor of all things Pathfinder, I'm going to use Dungeons and Dragons as the prime example. Not only because it was really the first of its kind, but because if you grew up, and I grew up, then it was going to be the talk of quite a few individuals on whether or not, as a Christian, you should allow your children or if you should participate in it. I am a Christian and I grew up in the 90s. And so, just a brief history, if you don't know. If you do know, you can skip a little bit because I'm pretty sure if you've stuck around for any of my videos, you're going to know kind of my general consensus on whether or not you should play a tabletop game as a Christian. Now, I can only speak as a Christian for the most part because that's what I am. And so the rest you're going to probably have to do for yourself. But I grew up in the 90s, graduated from high school in the early aughts. And so I was kind of at the tail end of what was called the Satanic Panic. You do not know, Gary Gygax created the Dungeons and Dragons realm kind of in the 70s. And this all started, I believe, because in around 1979, 1980, there was a big case where an individual went missing. And if I remember the story right, they had had a mental breakdown in college, and I believe that they thought they were slaying mice or something in the sewers, or it was the pads underneath the college that were used for maintenance. But they had had a mental breakdown. Now, you do see this in real life where people that have any kind of mental illness tend to grasp onto all sorts of things, anything that really fits their narrative, whether it is religion or whether it is something like Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think most of you believe that you're going to be going home and casting spells on your parents or your girlfriend. But it is something that was discussed a lot in the 80s into these comics, even to it becoming kind of a cultural thing. There's even a movie that had, I think it was Tom Hanks in it. I think it was in the late 80s when it came out. But it was a real topic. And thankfully, my parents trusted me to kind of manage it, and they didn't think I was doing anything or overreact for it. I do come from a Christian home. I've gotten more into the church as I've gotten older, definitely, especially after having my own kids. In fact, if you have been around for any of my other videos, you will have heard me talk about my main group, which has been doing this for an easy, I think, 7 years. And all of us are involved heavily in the church. We either teach Sunday school during the summer. One of us goes and teaches to people in other countries, third world areas, where they do not have a written language. And so they profess Christianity by mouth that way. So it's just something that all of us are involved in and our families are involved in. But a lot of people don't know that they see it because of the magic, and they see, well, there's monsters. Well, throughout history, and even in the Bible, you can see things where you're battling good and evil. One of the biggest takes that you can look at for modern day fantasy comes from Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Rings series after World War II. And he was a Christian author, and it influences clear roles that he had in his books where the heroes were fighting for goodness in the world. And I think a lot of us, we play generally these good characters, and that's why paladins work. That's why we play, so that we can go out and fight the evil, and you're going to be seeing these sometimes dark turns or sometimes grim stories, but it is the battle of good and evil. D&D is a pastime, just like people watching sports, NFL, basketball, TV shows, listening to music, most recreational activity. And I've found that there are some people that have taken a harsher look at that for Dungeons and Dragons because you play it than they do for watching a movie. Although there are some people that generally just expel any of that kind of material from their lives. Those are few and far between. But if you're going to expel Dungeons and Dragons simply for the possibility of the actions and the participation that you have, then wouldn't you also have to do the same thing when it comes to sports, actors, singers, every little thing that they have on display, everything they've done? Would that not be taken into consideration that instead of whatever the movie it was that they were in and how well it was done, or to what theme the movie was? I think more importantly, people should probably take into account how much you connect yourself to that medium. Even though I am a very big lover of tabletops, it does not rule my life as just an idol for me. It does not take over, and I do not get so into it. If you're the kind of person that if you play a video game or read a book and then suddenly you are shouting that you're a follower of Winkelvor and that is now your frame of reference, you may be taking too much identity into a game or into a medium, and it could be something that you need to talk with a group. But it's not something that we do. Now, when it comes to what I think of the game, it improves critical thinking. It allows you to have better conversational skills, maybe not with mics. It improves your ability to create stories and to kind of work things off the hip. Gary Gygax created the game originally as a tactical game, though it has evolved over the years greatly. It was still something, and he was a professing Christian. And so people are going to take things however they're going to take things, no matter how it is presented to them. They always are going to take what they can and what they want out of it. And then they put in the amount of effort. You have people that, if they read a book, sometimes they get trapped in that world. Or if they hear a song, that is their whole identity. And so I think when you have seen the rare cases of individuals that have had that kind of notoriety, that have been pushed into the news like we saw in the 80s, that is something that they were going to do regardless. They were looking for a trigger. I don't mean that they were looking for it, but their mind was waiting for something to trigger it. And that's just something that they were going to do. And I've listened to people quote scripture and look for ways to align it with sorcery. But in truth, if you're going to do that with something like Dungeons and Dragons, and you, as an individual, are not actually worshiping a false deity or doing something, then I think you would have to take that to almost everything that you see and do in your life. You'd have to cut out most things. There are things that I do not do at my table, period. I don't require people to profess their deity or anything like that. They do not have to role play or do some mocking ritual. For me, the mechanics, which is all that you really have, or all that really is in the game, are just that mechanic. Now, do they require alignment? They require acts. They require certain behaviors of a character. Yes, that is still a mechanic that is being imposed onto a character. The same thing as my wife, who had to pick a specific deity for a feat that she took in the Mummy's Mask campaign. It is a mechanical choice that she had to make to be able to take feat. Now, while she may improvise and you may have encounters with things, or have one of the characters who is Horus, I believe, priest, they provide encounters in the story, but that character or that individual does not take it as anything but a story. They don't see it any more than that. But I also think that it can be a way, if you are a Christian, to open up the way you are to other people. I've listened to several people that use Dungeons and Dragons as a way to talk to others. Geeks Under Grace, little articles, little entertainment. And so you have that I found recently, and there's an article from them. And then The Geek Preacher. It is something that, even though you are maybe not supposed to be of the world, but you are in the world. And these are pastimes that you do not have to forsake, I believe, as a Christian. And so we all get together and we play our games and we are fun. We play board games. I have groups that get together at my church, and their entire goal is to play board games. They get together to have fun with other people that have like values to them. And so they have started groups. They do Dungeons and Dragons, where they do just board games, card games, these kind of things. And they don't have to turn it into something that they are against. Like I said, there are certain things that I don't do at my tables. I don't do or have people enact things that are usually found on forums. I find most people don't do some of these things, whether you are Christian or I had half my table at one point that were definitive atheists when I did 3.5. And I mean, they weren't describing whether it was sexual acts or making the game all about that kind of behavior. You will find some people online, but I think they are trying to scratch a separate itch. And those are things that do not happen at the table. If a character makes a choice, a bad choice or otherwise, that's fine. And I do have those moments where you're using things to either seduce or persuade an individual. Famously, they were entrapping a crooked teacher, and so they had to stall. And they used a young female wanting to go to the college. And of course, they went through his desks and found the material they needed to literally get him arrested and canned. But that's just us. I just think that there are some people that still hold on to it as if it has a few words into it, like magic or something, that they can't dabble in it, that it can't be part of their life, or that there is now no way of doing it. And I don't believe that's true. I have played Magic, played lots of video games, and I have done tabletop RPGs since second edition, since I was probably 13 years old. And all that time, I have not had an issue, nor have I found much of an issue with playing with friends, regardless of where they're from. So it's just, for us, I think we play with everyone and we become friends with everyone that we can. So the Bible says, to live such good lives among the pagans, that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds, glorify God on the day he visits. And I think that this, as well as video games, can be just as good at an outreach as anything else. And I don't think, whether you are a professing Christian or whether you're not, that you have to give up on a game or something that is such a creative and enjoyable outlet as this, just because of what some people say. Either way, roll me some dice this weekend. Enjoy your games, make some friends, loot some dragons.